video will get a little bit technical, but I've tried to make it as approachable as possible. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about how weather can impact performance in aircraft. And this is true in real life, and MSFS does a good job of simulating these effects as well. We'll examine 3 weather elements that impact performance: temperature, air pressure, and humidity. I'm not a meteorologist or a weather expert by any means, but I do know a little bit about it from studying aviation. Everything I'll cover here is common knowledge for any licensed or certified pilot. Even a certified drone pilot will know this material. While weather theory can be both complex and confusing, what I'll cover in this video is some pretty basic material that anyone can grasp and make use of. Typically, in aviation, temperature is reported in centigrade. It should be noted that Celsius and centigrade are synonyms. They mean the same thing. To convert to Fahrenheit, take the centigrade value and multiply it by 1.8 and add 32. Pretty simple. The value of 32 should be easy to remember since 32 degrees Fahrenheit is freezing and 0 degrees centigrade is also freezing. Worst case, if you just want an approximate temperature conversion, just double the centigrade value and add 32. So at 20 degrees centigrade, we double to get 40. We add 32 to get 72 degrees. The actual Fahrenheit value is 68, so at least you're in the ballpark, so to speak. Next, I'll define our 3 elements of our discussion here and how they impact weather patterns. We'll start with air pressure first. In the U.S., we measure air pressure in inches of mercury, abbreviated as Hg. It's a throwback to the old barometric air pressure measurement tools from the 19th century that used mercury to measure air pressure like this one. In the U.S., a standard day is defined as 29.92 inches of mercury and 15 degrees centigrade at average sea level, also called MSL or mean sea level. Consider this image of teenagers creating a human pyramid. The young lady at the top experiences no more downward pressure than if she were just standing on the ground, while the 3 kids on the bottom are bearing the additional weight or pressure of the 3 girls that are above them. We can think of air pressure as working the same way. At sea level, we'll experience the greatest amount of air pressure, almost 30 inches of mercury, while if we were at the top of Kilimanjaro, the air pressure is only about 15 inches of mercury on average, a 50% reduction in pressure. As you can see by the sign, the summit is almost 6,000 meters above mean sea level. Air pressure is what creates wind. High pressure pushes the air towards low pressure. The amount of wind or wind speed is determined by the pressure differential. Cold air has a higher pressure than warm air, so cold air is typically also going to move towards warmer air. While warm air has lower pressure, warm air also rises, which cools the air and lowers its pressure as well. It should be noted that all weather is created by heat differentials. For example, the dew point is defined as the temperature at which ambient air will reach maximum moisture saturation. When the air temperature reaches the dew point, fog and clouds will form and precipitation can occur. Warmer air can hold more moisture than colder air as well. It's common for the summertime to be hot and humid. That heated air holds more moisture and creates humidity. Or if you have been having cold weather and thinking to yourself that if it rained you would get snow, and then it does rain, but the air temperature rises when it rains. This is due to the warmer air holding more moisture than the cold, dry air did before it rained. Okay, let's move on to humidity. Humidity is a measure of the amount of moisture currently in the air. Remember that to create fire, this will be important in just a bit, we need 3 elements: oxygen, typically in the form of air, some kind of fuel, and heat. While water has oxygen, it doesn't burn. Humidity describes the amount of water vapor or water molecules in the air. Weather scientists use the term relative humidity, which Joe Sobel, a meteorologist and senior vice president at AccuWeather, described as a comparison of the amount of moisture in the air versus the amount of moisture that the air could hold. Think of the atmosphere as a sponge that can hold a fixed amount of water, let's say a gallon of water. If there's no water in the sponge, then the relative humidity would be 0. Saturate the sponge with, say, half a gallon of water, half of what it's capable of holding, and that relative humidity climbs to 50%. We know that the amount of moisture that the atmosphere can hold relates directly to the temperature. Think of a rise in temperature like an increase in sponge size. A sponge that is half saturated with water is at 50% humidity. Now increase the size of the sponge without adding more water. The relative humidity decreases because the bigger sponge is capable of taking on more moisture, but the same amount of water remains. Soaking a sponge with more water than it can hold would cause it to drip, but this dripping doesn't always symbolize rainfall. The relative humidity measured on the ground where the sponge is doesn't reflect moisture levels above in the sky. Rain occurs when the rising air can no longer hold the water droplets that have formed clouds high in the sky. Clouds can form closer to the ground too, and that's fog. As previously mentioned, the temperature and atmospheric pressure changes as you ascend into the sky. The air gets colder and thinner, so 100% humidity might not mean rain, but it does mean dew. Temperature decreases 2 degrees centigrade or 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit for every 1,000 feet gained. And this is reasonably accurate up to 36,000 feet mean sea level. From 36,000 feet to 80,000 feet mean sea level, the temperature zone is considered constant at around minus 55 degrees centigrade or minus 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, let's circle back to air pressure for a moment. When the air pressure is low, a propeller has less air mass to bite into and create the thrust needed to overcome the weight and drag of the aircraft and keep it flying. When we have lots of air pressure, we have more air mass for the propeller to bite into and create thrust. The same is true for a jet engine. When we talk about humidity, aircraft piston engines create a controlled explosion internally by burning fuel. To do this, they create heat with a spark plug and they draw oxygen into the engine by sucking in air from the outside to create the burn. As I'm sure you can deduce by this, as humidity rises and the air contains more water than oxygen, the ability of the engine to perform at its peak is impacted by this moisture presence. After all, we typically use water to extinguish a fire, not start one. So, from all of this, we can conclude that a hot, humid, low-pressure day will be worse for flying than a cool, dry, high-pressure day. The impact of this for flight can do things such as change the airspeed at which your aircraft stalls. While you might think that your aircraft is rated to stall at 50 knots, that rating is based on a standard day's pressure and temperature. Again, 29.97 inches of mercury at 15 degrees centigrade, remember? Well, if you're flying along secure in the knowledge that your current 60 knots indicated airspeed is sufficient, flying into a low-pressure pocket of air might increase your stall speed to 60 knots. Now you're in a stall. Not good. Additionally, that low pressure, high temperature, and humidity condition will cause you to need a longer distance to rotate into takeoff, as well as a longer runway to land. Obstacles at the end of a runway that you might have cleared with ease on a cool, dry, high-pressure day will now need a throttle increase to clear on a hot, humid, low-pressure day. A super easy way to remember all of this is by thinking about yourself going out for a run. If you're at sea level and it's cool and low humidity, your body will perform at its peak. If you're in Denver a mile above sea level and it's both hot and humid, you'll be sweating and panting and your body will struggle during your run. Your aircraft works the same way. Jet, turboprop, or just plain old internal combustion, they all perform worse with high temperature, high humidity, and low pressure. Okay, that's it for this topic. If you made it this far, congratulations. You should be a better aviator as a result of this if it was new to you. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching this. Please hit like if it was helpful, as this helps other folks on YouTube find it. And until the next video, take care.